At the time of recording this footage, it's the Saturday before the launch of Deadpool and Wolverine. I was done with the prep work and now painting could start. I had the goal to release the video at the weekend of the launch. As you can tell, that didn't quite work, but I'm also not too far off. I probably could have finished it in time if I didn't put so much effort in this project. But when I do something, I try to do it right and not halfway. So I spent 3 audiobooks, roughly 30 hours just on the cleanup of the 3D printed parts and another 30 hours for the painting. I worked so much on this project during the last 2 weeks that I didn't even have time yet to watch the movie myself. So let me know in the comments how you liked it, if you have. But now let's dive into the painting process, and we start with the base. And by the way, this amazing model was created by the guys from Zez Studios. If you want to have the model yourself, a link to their store and Instagram is in the description. 4 big base parts were printed with a FDM printer and glued together with 5-minute epoxy, and the rest with a resin printer. I did want to put a light effect in the rocket beam, so I printed that in transparent resin. Then ran wires through the inside of the smoke, managed to put a 3.5 volt battery pack into the key where the smoke connects to the base, and a LED on the other side where it will connect to the rocket. Although the LED is super bright, for such a big piece it's unfortunately a bit undersized. But there wouldn't have been space for a bigger one anyway. For the smoke effect, my plan was to use transparent red, yellow and blue. Blue right where the exhaust will sit. The complete smoke effect gets misted with yellow, and between the blue and yellow we add some red and orange, so just a mix of the same yellow and red. The tricky part here is that you need to be careful to not overshoot it, because if you use too much color you start to lose the transparent look. And the texture of the smoke makes it impossible to clean it up once you messed it up, so don't mess it up. For the stony part of the base I started off with a base of Vallejo Cold Grey. Then I roughly painted over that with Sombre Grey that I diluted with distilled water. Afterwards I filled the airbrush cup completely with water and added 2 drops of black as a wash, followed by dry brushing light grey to bring back some of the rough edges. Then I blended the color of the smoke on the main part of the base and the part I printed with transparent resin. After varnishing the whole base, I mixed UV resin with a brown alcohol ink and used that on top of the water coming out of the 2 pipes, because this creates much more depth than a gloss varnish and smoothens the surface at the same time. With the main base part done, we need the rocket to attach to the exhaust smoke. And that created a bit of trouble and costed a lot of time. I started with a mix of black and silver, varnished that with a rattle can matte varnish, and then I wanted to use a red metallic for the fins. For that I used the same red that I already used for my Iron Man project, and it's supposed to look like this. But it turned out like this. So somehow the paints reacted badly with each other. So I mixed red with gunmetal and hand painted over it, but hand painting metallic is always a bit problematic. The only reason why I did that was because I was too lazy to mask all the fins off, but since the hand painting didn't lead to a nice even color, I had to do it anyway eventually. And after the fins were perfectly even in color, I completely destroyed it with a mix of gunmetal and black. What was maybe the most time-consuming part of this project was hand painting the signs with ivory, because the shapes were pretty complex and the ivory needed 3 or 4 coats to be even. As a base for the barrel that goes on the base, I used bloody red, and for the ammo boxes, yellow olive. When I was done with those base colors, I used Montana matte varnish. Unfortunately, that gave me flashbacks to my last Hulk video because it caused clouding. In this case, not too big of a deal, I want the barrel to look weathered and old anyway. Then I added a bit of rust on top, and the magic thing was, when I did another layer of varnish afterwards, the white haze went away. I'm pretty sure now that this problem was caused by not shaking the rattle can long enough. Then it was time to go all out on weathering the barrel before I painted the bullets. I primed those first with a gloss black primer, after the tedious job of masking every single bullet with masking tape and masking liquid. Then I painted everything gold. Then I used masking putty to cover up everything but the tips of the bullets and painted that with bronze, and then I masked off everything but the bullet belts and painted that with glossy black primer again. And done. The last part that goes onto the base is that manhole cover. And now we can jump to Wade Wilson himself. For his suit I didn't want a standard red, but something a bit darker, so I mixed red with light grey. When you mix custom paints, always make sure to have enough. There's nothing worse than having to fix something later and not being able to match the exact color tone anymore. But after painting all of the pieces, I realized the grey didn't do much and that he looks like a fire truck. So I added gory red into the mix and also added a darker grey. But the comparison between the old mix and the new one was still not what I thought of, so I mixed in ultramarine blue and black, and now I finally had the mixture I was thinking of and painted all of the suit parts with it a third time. For the black parts of his suit I mixed black and tire black in a ratio of 1:1. Then I fiddled around with all the leather strap parts with different shades from khaki to dark brown and greys and black. First I tried lighter colors, but that didn't really match the overall picture. Then I used dark grey pastel for the shading of the recessed areas. The effect with the pastels was way too subtle though, so I used a quite risky method for further weathering. I sprayed on some black and then I used a paper towel to get away most of it after putting some alcohol on the paper towel. This breaks down the black and creates a heavy weathered and rough look that I smoothened out afterwards with another light coat of the same black. For the belt buckle I wanted to use bright colors, so I primed it first with grey, went over that with white, and then I hand painted the inside black, and later it got a coat of glossy varnish. However, that glossy varnish was not glossy enough, so I used the same technique I used on the base before and took some clear UV resin to create a thicker, shiny coat. The last step for the suit was some more weathering. The weathering with black worked great on the red parts of the suit, but for the parts that were already black I had to use a brighter color. So I mixed khaki with a bit of black and went over the whole suit a second time to finish it off. I started the head sculpt with dark flash and continued with pale flash. Next up were the washes. I usually take Vallejo Model Air Red, but since I now have transparent red, I thought I'd just grab that. Yeah, that wasn't a good idea. So back to the beginning and then with the normal red. Much better. For the blue I took the transparent version again, and luckily that didn't surprise me like the red before. Then I did a round of burnt umber to bring back a little bit of a tan, and then it was speckling time with a bunch of colors. When that was done I used a mix of pale flash, burnt umber and glaze medium to tone it down, and afterwards I put some of the transparent red into the mix and painted individual scar marks into Deadpool's ugly face. I continued the process of washes for another couple of rounds, and then I painted the lips and tongue with another mix of those same colors. Then I painted the eye with ghost grey and used bone white as a base color for the teeth. For the one unmasked eye I grabbed my eye decals that you should also get in my Etsy shop if you hate painting eyes as much as I do. They will make your life so much easier, trust me. And in under 5 minutes I had a perfectly looking eye that I varnished with satin varnish, which I also did for the tongue, and then that was done too. For the boots I had the same problem as with the suit, that the red I started off with was way too bright, so I had to do another custom paint of darker red. Since those are shin guards I mixed a bit of gunmetal in as well. Then another mix of light grey, red and royal purple for the actual boots. For the shoe straps I used glossy black primer, and then I weathered them in 3 steps with watered down light grey, khaki and black. And that was it, more or less. I completely painted the arms because I was too lazy for the masking, with the exception of the glossy black things on the wrist. For his guns I got inspired by the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, where I saw that Deadpool has golden guns in this one. So I used Montana Gold Chrome Rattle Can to imitate that look. The only challenge with this color is that it's really sensitive to basically anything. You can't varnish it and you even shouldn't touch it. So I had to very carefully paint around those guns. For the katana handle I again got inspired from the trailer, where the handle has a yellowish tone, but that didn't fit into the overall image at all, so I went back to the safe bet red. There are some tiny Deadpool logos at the end of the handle that I also painted red. Whenever I use metallic colors, I use black as a base color. My idea for the katana was to make it two-colored with a black stripe in the middle. But first I painted everything silver because then the masking was easier. Then I used the same silver and roughed up the look of the blade a bit. However, the silver got a bit too dull after varnishing it with a rattle can varnish, so I used Green Stuff's chrome color as a final touch. For the katana holder I used the same metallic red as for the rocket fins in the beginning, but there I had the same problem that the color turned dull after varnishing it. However, for this piece it didn't matter because I cover up 90% of the red with black. The pouches also took really long because of their number and because I had to do a lot of back and forth with different tones of browns and weathering. The last parts were those two tiny hand grenades. I started with camouflage green, followed by dry brushing with chainmail silver that I also used to paint some of those tiny details. Then I hand painted a tiny yellow stripe around the head of the grenade, and afterwards I masked off another tiny ring that I painted red. I had to do a little bit of cleanup from the overspray, but then it was time for the last touch, painting the straps that hold the grenades to the belt with a greyish mix. And with that it was finally time to glue everything together and prepare Deadpool for the final shots.
They call me a god. 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 Let's go. I'm about to go off like a weapon. Fuel to the top, got a filled up engine. In my thoughts, obsession. I will not stop, no, I'm never second guessing. I got a God complex. Haters love to hate, but I never feel pressed. Got a lot on my plate, but I never get stressed. I'll take all the pressure like I'm acing this test. Tear it up like I'm Jason. I see the world like it's ready for the taking. I see this place like a game I'm playing. Straight to the